Alhamdulillah al-Qadir al-Alim, al-Fatir al-Hakim, al-Jawad al-Karim, al-Rabbi rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala Rasulih al-Kareem. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Dear viewers and listeners, inshallah ta'ala, today we will talk about the great Muslim Hazrat Imam Hasan al-Basri, rahmatullah ta'ala alayh. Imam Hasan al-Basri was born in the year 21 after Hijrah, that is the year 642 of the Common Era, in Medina Sharif, and he left this world in the year 110 after Hijrah. He was the son of a freedman of Hazrat Zayd bin Sabit radiallahu anhu, and the son of a freed woman of Hazrat Salma radiallahu ta'ala anha, among the noble wives of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When he was an infant, he was blessed to be nursed by Hazrat Salma radiallahu ta'ala anha, and it is said that his eloquence in speech comes from this blessing. As a young child, his mother took him to Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, "O Allah, make him wise in the religion and beloved to people." He was known in his life and even today as one of the Tabi'een, one of the most famous of Tabi'een, and he was known for his fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his following and living the sunnah of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam, his piety, his abstinence, his fearlessness in front of rulers, and his eloquence in speech. Among the early Muslims, he was considered one of the Abdal, that is, one of the high-ranking friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hazrat Anas radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "The earth shall never lack 40 men similar to that of the friend of the merciful, that is Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam. Through them people will receive rain and are given help. None of them dies except Allah substitutes another in his place." Hazrat Sheikh Fariduddin Attar rahmatullah ta'ala alayh gives a biography of Hazrat Imam Hasan al-Basri, and he writes about Hazrat Imam Hasan's turning towards the Sufi path. And he writes that Imam Hasan al-Basri was known as Hasan of the Pearls. He was a jeweler, and he used to trade frequently with the high-ranking officials of the Byzantine Empire. One day he was meeting one of the prime ministers of the Byzantine Empire, and the minister asked him, "Would you like to accompany me on a brief journey?" And Imam Hasan said, "Yes, I will go with you." So they went on their horses and they traveled several days, and finally in the middle of the desert they came upon a tent which was decorated with the Byzantine style of brocade, and they stood and watched the tent from a distance. And soon afterwards a large army came towards the tent, stood, they spoke some words towards the tent, and then they left. And then afterwards 400 philosophers came in a group, and they stood near the tent. Someone spoke from that group, and then those philosophers left. And then after that 300 elders came with their white beards, and they also spoke some words towards the tent, and then they left. And finally 200 fair maidens came towards the tent carrying trays of silver and gold, and they spoke some words and then they left. And Hazrat Imam Hasan al-Basri was watching this all this time with the minister in silence, and he was very surprised. And finally the Caesar himself came, and Hazrat Imam Hasan al-Basri asked the minister, what is going on here? What is this event? And the Prime Minister explained that the Caesar had a son who was wise, handsome, beautiful, and learned in all the sciences. And he became afflicted by a sickness and passed away. And every year an army comes to visit the son's resting place and says to the son, O son of Caesar, if what has befallen you could have been averted by might or by our strength, we would certainly support you. But whatever has come to you cannot be overtaken by our strength. And then they left. And the philosophers that came said to the tent, O son of Caesar, whatever has befallen you, if it could be reasoned away or taken away by proofs or by our logic, we would certainly do so, and we would offer you our full support. But we cannot reason against the one who has taken you away. And then the elders come and they say to the son in his grave, O son of Caesar, if what has befallen you could be averted by our negotiations or by our influence, we would certainly help you, but we have no influence against the one whom has taken you away. And finally the maidens come and they said, O son of Caesar, if what has befallen you it could have been averted by wealth or beauty, we would have offered ourselves and our wealth for your sake. But alas, we have no wealth and beauty have no sway over the one who has taken you away. And finally the Caesar came, and the Caesar said, O my son, I offer everything I had in this world, my army, my philosophers, my elders, the maidens of the kingdom, to help you or to intercede on your behalf, but none of those could hold sway. So until we meet again next year, I wish you peace. And the Caesar leaves also. And Hazrat Imam Hasan rahmatullah alayh was so taken aback by this that he vowed that he would dedicate his life to seeking the truth and dedicate himself to finding spiritual peace. So Hazrat Imam Hasan al-Basri was, as we said, one of the most famous of the Tabi'een, and he is said to have narrated over 1,400 ahadith. That is, that 1,400 ahadith come to us through his transmission. And he is known for his eloquence in speech. He had said one time, our salt has disappeared, what good is left in us? As a commentary of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam's hadith, that the likeness of my companions is like salt in food. Food is not good without it. And another time Hazrat Imam Hasan al-Basri rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh said, we laugh, and yet who knows, perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has looked at some of our deeds and said, I will not accept anything from you. Can you fight Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Whoever disobeys Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is fighting him. I have met 70 veterans of Badr. Most of their garments were wool. Had you seen them, you would have said they were crazy. And had they seen you, they would have said, had they seen the best of you, they would have said, those people will have no share of the hereafter. And had they seen the worst of you, they would have said, those people do not believe in the Day of Judgment. I have seen people for whom this world was cheaper than the dust under their feet. They would come home at night having nothing except something to hardly fill their stomach. But they would say, by Allah, I will certainly give some of this food away to the needy people for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then they would give away some portion of their food, even if they were more in need of the food than the person to whom they gave the food. Hazrat Imam Hasan al-Basri rahmatullah ta'ala alayh met many of the companions, as he said, and was always missing them and loving them. One of the sayings of Hazrat Imam Hasan al-Basri that is quoted by Imam Ghazali rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh is that forgetfulness and hope are two blessings upon the progeny of Adam, Hazrat Adam alayhi salam. But for them, Muslims would not walk in the streets. And Hazrat Ibn al-Jawzi, he mentions a story in his biography of the Sufi Kiram, and he said that Hazrat Imam Hasan al-Basri rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh used to wear a cloak, and he wore the same cloak for the last 20 years of his worldly life. And after he had left this world, his white cloak was still in a state of immaculate beauty, cleanliness and quality. Hazrat Data Sahab rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh, Hazrat Ali bin Usman al-Hajwari rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh, who was famous around the world as one of the most famous Sufi saints. He mentions in the biography of Hazrat Imam Hasan al-Basri rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh that once a villager asked Hazrat Imam Hasan al-Basri, what is sabr? And Hazrat Imam Hasan al-Basri rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh replied, sabr is of two kinds. Sabr at the time of trouble or misfortune, and sabr in the obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and avoiding what is prohibited. And then the villager said, you are the most pious person I know, and you are the most patient person I know. And Imam Hasan al-Basri rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh replied, my piety is only greed and my patience is just fear. And the villager asked, please explain what you said, because I'm becoming worried now. And Imam Hasan al-Basri replied, my piety is only for the sake of Jannah, and true piety is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And my sabr, my patience, is only for fear of the hellfire. And true patience is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So piety and patience for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is true piety and patience. And furthermore, another saying quoted by Hazrat Ali bin Usman al-Hajwari rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh is that the company of the wicked breeds suspicion and antagonism against the pious. The meaning of this, as explained by Hazrat Data Sahab rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh, is that people may associate with false Sufis, and because of those false Sufis' bad habits or bad character or hypocrisy, those people then associate all Sufis with these bad characteristics, when in fact it is just these false Sufis. So by associating with bad company, those people, those Sufis who are truly pious, are treated with suspicion and antagonism. And Hazrat Data Sahab rahmatullah alayh advises us to make sure to keep company of truly good Sufis, and Sufis who are doing work and serving humanity for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Shaykh Fariduddin Attar rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh, in his biography of Imam Hasan al-Basri, he writes that one of the incidences of his life was that there was a famous Hafiz Abu Amr, and he went to Hazrat Imam Hasan al-Basri, and he had committed a sin. He had looked at something incorrectly, and he went to Hazrat Imam Hasan al-Basri because due to his action he had forgotten all of the Quran Sharif that he had memorized. So he went to explain the situation to Imam Hasan al-Basri rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh, and he asked Imam Hasan al-Basri rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh for advice and dua. And Imam Hasan al-Basri was concerned about the situation, and he said, now is the season for Hajj, so go for Hajj, and after you have completed the Hajj, go to the Masjid-e-Khaif. This is a famous masjid inside the Haram Sharif area, and go to Masjid-e-Khaif, and inside that masjid you will see an old man in the prayer niche. He may be talking to people, so do not disturb him. Wait until the crowd has left, and then ask that man about your situation and ask him to pray for you. So Hafiz Abu Amr did as he was instructed. He went for the Hajj, and after completing the Hajj, he went to Masjid-e-Khaif, and as he was told, he saw a man, an old man, sitting in the prayer niche, and so Hafiz Abu Amr sat down and waited and watched, and there were people there, and later on another man arrived in white robes, and people gathered around that man as well. And then after the prayer had been said, people departed, and the old man was left alone. So Hafiz Abu Amr approached him and explained to him the situation, and the old man had just raised his eyes to the heaven and started to make dua when the Quran Sharif came back to the heart of Hafiz Abu Amr, and Hafiz Abu Amr was overjoyed and was very happy and thanked the man and thanked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the old man asked him, who advised you to come to me, or how did you know to come to me? And Hafiz Abu Amr said, I came through the instructions of Imam Hasan al-Basri rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh. And the man said, Hasan has torn my veil. In other words, he has exposed me, so I will also expose him. That man that you saw come in with the white robes, and the people paid him respect and gathered around him, and then he left, that man was Hasan. Every day after the Asr prayer in Basra, he comes here and spends time with me, and then he goes back before the Maghrib prayer. So this is one of the miracles attributed to Imam Hasan al-Basri, rahmatullah alayh. And there are many miracles in his life, and much of his life and his speeches have been preserved. In the conclusion of his life, his funeral prayer was conducted in Basra, and the whole city of Basra attended it, and it was the most attended funeral prayer. And it is said that the Jami Masjid of Basra was empty during Asr because everyone was attending the funeral prayer of Hazrat Imam Hasan al-Basri, rahmatullah alayh. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to follow his example, and benefit from his continuous blessing. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us to love Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, his Sahaba Ikram, and the followers of his Sahaba Ikram. Ameen. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.